Youth. My name is Nate.
And I'm Ashley.
And we're really excited to bring to you guys this new series called Rooted in the Story, where we're going to be looking at the entire narrative of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. What's going on? For a lot of us, it's intimidating to look at our Bibles and figure out where do I fit into this? It's easy to understand the New Testament. What does the Old Testament have to say about the New Testament? And so our hope is that this series brings a little bit of clarity to that. So Ashley, why is it so important for us to all be immersed in our Bibles?
Yeah, so I look at the Bible as the greatest love story ever written, and who would not want to be a part of that? I definitely want to be a part of that every day. Pretty cool. So what does the Bible actually say about the Bible? In Hebrews 11:12, it says that the word is alive and active. It is still so relevant and relatable to who we are today as sons and daughters of the King. And I think it is so important to be immersed in our Bible for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
It holds so much truth to who we are and how we walk out our lives as a Christian. The Bible, in my opinion, is one of the easiest and most accessible ways to be able to hear straight from God, hear His voice, and to be surrounded by it constantly every single day. Want to hear from God what He is speaking over our lives? Just open the Bible. It's really just another way to hear the voice of God. And when we get in the habit of being immersed in our Bibles daily, whether that be every morning before we head to school or before we eat our breakfast, or right before we go to bed, it helps us center ourselves in the correct posture and position in being able to live our lives fully for Christ. In Psalm 119:105, the verse says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." His word will guide our path, and we don't have to worry or be anxious about what our future holds, because ultimately He is going to totally guide our way, and the word, the Bible, is just an easier way and right in front of us to be able to see what He has for our lives. And in Matthew 4:4, it says that His word will give us life, that we will live by every word that comes from the mouth of God. His scripture and voice gives us life. How cool is that? That just being able to open the Bible, that every single word written down on there can totally just give us life. It's like our food and our water, just life from God. And one thing I love about being immersed in the Bible is that we get to learn so much more about ourselves and the characteristics of God. Every single book in the Bible will reveal so many different characteristics about who our God is. From Genesis 1 and 2, showing that He is a creator, that He is the maker, that He's really just an artist. And then from the gospel, showing when Jesus came down that He is merciful, He gives us grace, He gives us compassion, He cares for us, and He's ultimately just a forgiving and loving God. And through scripture, we also learn that Christ is in us and we are enough. What a beautiful thing that we can intentionally be a part of every single day, receiving His love and grace through reading the Bible. So Nate, why is it important to know the whole greater story of the Bible?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for a lot of us, myself included, the Bible's intimidating. There's so many parts of the Bible that don't make sense. There's these wars, there's these famines, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of killing. How does all of this work together? And how is this to be something that's life-giving? I think it's really important to know that the biblical story doesn't start in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus doesn't show up in this world that is all of a sudden just ready for Him. There's a lead up to that moment where Jesus arrives. Our Bibles start in Genesis, and there's this story of God bringing His people through all of these challenges, through exile, for them to be a chosen people. And that's where we need to know the story, because when we know the story of the Old Testament, the New Testament comes to life. There's so many really cool parables between the Old Testament and the New Testament that we're going to talk about. Things if you think about Jesus and His time on earth, one of the small things is that at the beginning of His baptism, he goes through the water, and then He goes into the desert for 40 days to be tempted. And if you know the story of Israel goes through the waters, and they spend 40 years of temptation. So there's all these really cool parables that we're going to begin to explore. And I think it's just so important to know our Bibles, because we need to to understand the entirety, it shows us where we fit into this story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Ashley, what are we basing all of this teaching off of?
Yeah, so there's this one quote by this guy called N.T. Wright. And to summarize it, he talks about putting the Bible into these easy to understand sections, because sometimes the Bible can be overwhelming. There's like over 1,000 pages. There's a lot. So it's great how he puts it into an easy to understand way. So a very helpful illustration of how the Bible invites us to find our place in the story. Much like the Shakespeare plays that you've read in school, he splits it off into 6 different acts. In the script of a lost Shakespeare play, imagine that just a little over 5 of the 6 acts were actually found, and all the actors cast to play their parts in the play had to improvise and make up the missing parts. Something like this may help us understand how the Bible can guide our own lives now. The 6 acts of the Bible unfold this way. Number 1 is creation. Number 2 is the fall into sin. Number 3 is Israel's story. 4 is the story of Jesus Christ, which are the Gospels. Number 5 is the story of the church, leading to God's plan of redemption, which is an act not yet completed. And the final and 6th act is the return of the King, redemption completed. Since we know the author of the Bible, God, and how the Bible has unfolded up until this point, how can we play our part in advancing His kingdom and in living our lives as believers today?
I think that's so good in framing the story in those 6 acts, because oftentimes we can get so caught up in a certain part of the Bible. We're reading like a book like Ezekiel and you're like, what is going on here? But when you can see that, okay, we've broken the whole entire book into 6, you're like, okay, I understand that like we live in this tension of, for us, like the kingdom hasn't come back yet. But like we live in that tension, so we're kind of in Act 5. But then we like Revelation's kind of Act 6. And like Gospels is like another part. I think it's gonna be really good to like clarify the Bible in that way.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this. I think it's gonna be so good. So stay tuned. We're gonna be announcing more when these are gonna be coming out, and as follow-up, how we're gonna be like discussing these and going deeper with this content. Thanks for watching. Did you thumbs up?
Yeah.
You get like at the end, just like a bunch of us, just gifs of this. Or gifs.
Is GIF or GIF?